In the clash now, we've heard some of the gut-wrenching detail just then from Mark of Wayne Couzens' crime. And we know as punishment he will die in prison. But given that his crime was heinous enough to set a new legal precedent regarding whole life sentences, and the fact that Couzens will ultimately lose his life for his actions, tonight I'm asking whether there is an argument for the death penalty to return for our most evil offenders. Joining me is Henry Bolton, the former Ukip leader and ex-police officer, and Benjamin LOUGHNANE, research fellow at the Bow Group, who both agree that it is appropriate for extreme cases. However, former Scotland Yard detective SHABNAM CHAUDHRI disagrees due to worries about potential miscarriages of justice, while barrister and author Bobby Friedman argues that rotting in jail is a much greater punishment. So, Henry Bolton, look, I completely understand why today, on a day like today, support for the death penalty goes through the roof. But like SHABNAM, I have real concerns because even if it's 1 in 10,000 cases, you know sometimes, Henry, you know sometimes innocent men are convicted. Do you not have a concern about that?
Of course I do, Dan, yes. And when I say that I support the death penalty, there's a lot of caveats and conditions and so on around all of that. So, for example, in the case of the killers of Lee Rigby, Fusilier Lee Rigby, that was all on video. The idiots, the disgusting, vile creatures who committed that murder videoed themselves, they talked about it, there was no doubt whatsoever. And in this case as well, likewise, there is no doubt, there's no ambiguity whatsoever. And I'm not saying that it should be a statutory imposition of the death sentence, but I do feel that in certain cases, the court should have that option available to them in those sort of extreme cases with those sort of caveats. And I'd also say, though, that there's an entire moral maze around it, which I recognise fully. I mean, what are the interests of the family? What's the public feeling? What's the law? And of course, and what's in the national interest and the public interest in terms of safety and security? So there are all of these things in the mix. Of course, you know, there are some horrendous examples in the past, and in fact, the death penalty was abolished because of errors and the possibility of errors. So I'm not playing that down at all. Okay. But I think it's an option that should be there.
Benjamin LOUGHNANE, how would you see the death penalty being reintroduced to this country? For what crimes? How would it work?
I think in cases like the current crime of Sarah Everard, it wasn't just about the crime itself, it was about the position of trust and authority that Wayne Couzens had, and his violation of that has rent a deep scar in the public consciousness, which now means it's harder for us to trust the police. You think of a woman walking alone now home in the dark. She no longer feels safe approaching a police officer for help or assistance after what's happened. This is something that goes so deeply to the core of the very principles of our society, about the things that keep us safe, the institutions that are there to prevent these things from happening. And so
that it's worth the government killing him.
No, in those cases, I think it is important that we have the option for people to have this, if it is what is necessary to restore trust among the public in the institutions. You know, we need to have the option of that sort of extreme level in the law for a punishment which we can say this crime is so truly abhorrent, so truly far and beyond what is normal, what is, you know, the average sort of crime. This is something so beyond compunction that the normal sort of punishments don't apply. And I think the way that it would be enacted would be for us to say that is something that we have as an option in law, but which should only be used in the rarest of cases.
OK, well, look, let me bring in the former Scotland Yard detective SHABNAM CHAUDHRI. SHABNAM, I mean, I can only imagine the sorts of mixed emotions you must feel today about this case. But I believe you agree with me that the death penalty is just too risky because of the potential for a miscarriage of justice.
I do, and first of all, yes, it's been a day of mixed emotions. You know, makes you feel ashamed to be part of a service that, you know, that this individual, Wayne Couzens, has gone on to commit such an absolutely horrific crime. But look, let's look at miscarriages of justice, for example. Now, we're talking about low-level crimes here, but between June 2019 and March 2020, there were 1,336 successful wrongful convictions in the Magistrates' Court and the Court of Appeal. Now, whilst they may well be low-level crimes, then you go on to other crimes, the history of crimes like Derek Bentley, the Birmingham Six. You have recently the 4 black men that were convicted of robbery in 1972. Now, they were still serious offences, but the fact is that these were miscarriages of justice. Personally, I feel that Wayne Couzens would more than likely welcome the death penalty because it would get him out of serving a horrific prison sentence, because he is not going to have a good day in prison. He's a sex offender, he's a predator, he's murdered somebody, he's betrayed the trust of Sarah Everard and the public in general. And on top of that, he was a serving police officer. There isn't a single person that is going to be in that prison that is going to make his life easy.
And Bobby Friedman, that's your point, isn't it? That actually it's the easy way out to give a scumbag animal like Couzens the death penalty.
I think that's right. It does make it all too easy in a way. But there is a more fundamental point, isn't it, which is that we as a society should not be killing people. One of the reasons, this is the most disgusting, horrific crime. And the one thing that unites all of us on this panel tonight is our complete disgust at the acts of Wayne Couzens. But we as a society are so appalled in part by this because of the sanctity of life. And it is...
Oh, no, we've just lost Bobby Friedman. We'll try and get him back. But Henry Bolton, I wanted to come back to you. Can you just tell me what you believe the public appetite is, Henry, for the death penalty?
I think rather like this panel, Dan, it's rather divided, pretty much down the middle. And of course, when you get something so emotive as this horrendous incident in this case, then of course everybody has the discussion and everybody's emotions pick up. If you were to ask me whether I think the death penalty will come back, I think the answer is no. But I think there is an argument, and I think it's a debate that we should continue to have. I think the public are really disappointed in the police service in a number of ways. I do not think there are police officers out there it's just been said, who should be ashamed to be part of the service. But I think there's an awful lot that the police need to do to not simply regain trust after this case, but actually to gain the trust and confidence of everybody in society as it is before this case. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And I think that influences this particular case, of course, as well. So, Dan, I think it's pretty much split down the middle. And, there's going to be people wavering on every side, because we all know, as was said, that we do not want to be a society that's known for killing people, but at the same time, occasionally, it might be in the public interest.
I hear you. We've got the barrister and author Bobby Friedman back now. Bobby, do you want to finish your point and respond to Henry too?
Yes, thank you, Dan. The point I was making was that we as a society don't want to lower ourselves to that level. It's the sanctity of life is so important. It's one of the reasons that we find these sorts of crimes so abhorrent. And yes, of course, the perpetrators are horrific, disgusting people, horrific individuals. But I don't think we ever want to stoop to that level. And we have certain basic principles as a society, and one of those is respect and sanctity of life. So however horrific someone's actions are, I don't think we want to lower to that level. And I do think that it actually can be the coward's way out. We saw today, and hearing Mark's description earlier, Wayne Couzens is a coward, and it's all far too easy. And of course, you add to that the huge risk of miscarriage of justice. In the US, for example, over the last 40 years, you've had about 180 people who've been put on death row and later had their convictions overturned. We're lucky we have a better justice system in this country than the US, but
it's a risk. It's a risk, and I do understand that. But public opinion seems to be with you, Benjamin Loughnane. We've actually been conducting a poll via the GBNews Twitter account tonight. Would you support the reintroduction of the death penalty? 62.5% of our viewers saying yes, 37.5% saying no. Your reaction?
Well, that number is obviously going to be inflated by the news of today because it's very fresh for people and they feel very angry and they want to know that there's going to be action taken against people like Wayne. On an average day, you do the same poll, it would be about 50-50. But it shifts, it changes the polling. If you ask people, should we have the death penalty, you'll get a sort of 60-40 no to yes. If you say death penalty for murder, you get 60-40 yes to no. It switches based on how you phrase the question and what you're asking, which is why I think that we should have the death penalty, but it should be reserved for really extreme cases. And there should also be a high level of proof required that the person in question is guilty to avoid those circumstances where, as they say, there may be miscarriages of justice. In the case of Wayne Couzens, I think it has been proven beyond all doubt that he is guilty of this crime. We have him on camera. He pled guilty. As far as I know, there is absolutely no question of whether or not he is guilty. So in that circumstance, I don't think the question of a miscarriage of justice really applies because we know this man is guilty. We know what he did was absolutely horrific and we know the effects of it upon society as a whole.
I understand.
Not just on that.
I understand, and look, I do appreciate your point of view. I absolutely do, and part of me viscerally feels it would be the right thing for this bloke. But I've come down on the side of Bobby and I say, let's let him rot in hell in the most revolting circumstances. By hell, I mean prison, because he is going to have one heck of a ride. And it will be all bad, and that's what he deserves. Let's not give this monster, this subhuman scumbag, let's not give him a way out. But thank you for having this debate. It's Henry Bolton, the former UKIP leader and ex-police officer, the former Scotland Yard detective SHABNAM CHAUDHRI. Sadly, we lost your line at the end there, and barrister and author Bobby Friedman, plus Benjamin LOUGHNANE, the research fellow at the Bow Group. Thank you all.